Hi, this is Tim Zhu, CFO of the Boston Red Sox, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
Hi, it's Jack, and we're back with a special on-location episode of CFO Thought Leader. We are attending Perform 23, Planful's annual customer conference here in Chicago this year. We want to share with you a number of CFO conversations that we've been having here at Perform 23. But first, our talk with Planful CEO Grant Halloran. That's something I was just jotting down here. So are we...
Just about.
Okay,
Just about.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're wrong. All right. Yeah, I think we're good all around.
Okay, excellent. So you probably won't be surprised that we want to talk with you about AI and generative AI. I want to emphasize that in your talk this morning, you told Planful customers, we need to be deliberate and thoughtful about AI on your behalf. And you seem to be saying, all right, everybody, chill, take a breather. Do I have that right? Like you were trying to, it wasn't as if you were building up the hype. You were just saying, everybody, chill.
Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity. Like I said in the speech, there's occasionally comes along in our lives where we do enter a true new era of technology, and I firmly believe that is the case here. However, it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West at the moment. There's a lot of stuff happening and creating a lot of uncertainty. So when we talk with our customers, by and large, most corporations we work with are somewhere between skeptical and on pause for anything like this, right? So they're saying, look, we need to study it, we need to understand it. Now, as it pertains to us as a software vendor dealing with sensitive financial data, clearly there are legal and security implications around all of that need to be addressed and thought through. And so until we get a little bit more certainty about it, I don't think that these solutions are going to become production ready. That said, of course, it behooves us to invest a lot in R&D, and we have a whole data science team that's excitedly working away on these technologies, understanding the landscape, the technical opportunities, the different variants of everything we're seeing, what we're going to develop ourselves as it relates to this technology. So that's all happening. I think in summary, Jack, my message to our audience is, when you partner with us, we need to be deliberate, we need to be thoughtful, we need to make sure that we're factoring in all those larger considerations on behalf of them. We're the custodians of all of that data and these processes for our customers. So I do think it's going to be an exciting time. There's going to be a bunch of really cool use cases that are going to come out and that we'll bring out, but we're going to do it in a methodical way and partner with our customers about that.
I think one of the untold stories is really what's happening in management teams like yours. And you use that other anecdote of your CTO coming by quite often to point out, rather than, once every 3 weeks. No, it's every other day there's another discovery, it seems like, related to AI. I'm wondering if, I thought that was really fascinating. I think it's happening in every business. And it was just, I think, very revealing to hear from you how it's happening at Planful, how everyone's seeing and experiencing it together.
The nature of this technology is different to the previous technologies. And we talk about new eras, whether it was the cloud coming along and replacing on-premise technologies, and then the mobile, and then social came along, and there's a whole nexus of all these different forces that have come along, and ubiquitous Wi-Fi, so we created an always-on connected world. Mobile phones now enable that to happen anywhere you were. So there have been tremendous amounts of changes. Can you imagine the world today without the internet? Okay. The difference with AI is the speed. of the change, right? Because of its nature, it gets smarter at an exponential rate that is very difficult for human society to understand. So I always emphasize this is going to do lots of things around continuing to automate things, take away low cognition work and enable humans to do higher cognition work. It's going to ultimately, in the long run, create more opportunity for better lifestyles. I think all of those good things are going to happen. In various use cases, in various parts of life, it's going to happen at a rate that we haven't been able to fathom before. So that speed of change is something that we're going to have to adapt to. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be interesting.
Just picking up on some of what you use to help people think differently, I think this morning, when you shared about HR, we don't really depend on the HR department to manage people. Is that, and can you reflect a little more on the point? And it was about finance.
Yeah,
you were using HR.
Yeah, thank you. So it's really, finance has often been seen as, a gatekeeper, or, they have the keys to the kingdom. At the end of the day, they can restrict or, unconstrained spending and all those sorts of things. The analogy I used, or the comparison I used, was when I asked the audience, is managing people in a company, in an organization, a HR function? And of course, no one would say it is. It's management. It's part of what we do as a company. It's a corporate-wide capability, and great companies spend huge amounts of time and effort trying to make that an awesome capability in the business. HR is there as an enabler, as a service provider to provide programs and training and learning and development and recruit the right people and all those sorts of things. So they're more doing strategic programs, but the actual managing and leading of people is a company-wide process. So the encouragement I was giving the finance audience that we have here is think about that in a similar way. Financial performance management, how do you drive peak financial performance in a company, is something that you need to think about as being an enabler of, right? All of the folks that control the budgets, control revenue responsibility, whether it's in CapEx spending, whatever it is, those people need their IQ elevated around finances. And so that's what we're seeing actually the best companies doing, is they're actually seeing these processes as company-wide, and they want to enable and improve the financial IQ of their business people that they partner with. So that's basically the message, and I think actually it resonated. I've had quite a few people say actually that really kind of like changed how I think about it a little bit.
I wanted to ask about, and again, the acquisition of Plana only happened, it seems longer, but it happened only 7 months ago, 8 months ago. The marketing module now for Planful, I think it's been referred to as. Are there other modules we should expect, or is this something of an unusual company and offering? Are there other offerings that could similarly be added?
Yeah, I think so. There are opportunities in IT, sales, operational areas, manufacturers.
So it would be sales planning. It
could be some specific type. So it's interesting, within our platform, there are a lot of sales use cases done. So we have a dynamic modeling engine that enables you to build a lot of SKU level sales planning, for instance, doing sensitivity analysis around detailed granular sales data. That is already happening in the system. A lot of our customers do their IT, CapEx and OpEx planning and variance analysis inside the system as well. I think the thread that needs to run through it is the level of how complex the data model is, like how different is the data model from the corporate finance data models. And obviously in marketing, it is the dimensionality in which you plan and account for your spend in marketing is very different to the way the finance team thinks about it. Workforce, you need to do it at the individual employee level. Finance cares about the roll-ups, right? So that then leads to different experiences and different features and functions that those specific departmental teams need. I think supply chain to some extent, we have sales and operations planning being done inside our system. So there may be opportunities for us to explore where we may tuck in, some other acquisitions in those sorts of areas. If not necessarily a plan of ours, but it's definitely a possibility.
We had the opportunity to speak to some of your customers. One was a UK lighting company CFO, and their offerings are somewhat sensitive to the economy, and we are in this uncertain time. How is Planful situated? What would you tell us a little bit about the economic situation?
I'll begin by saying I think I speak on behalf of every CEO and the CFOs that we serve, that we all wish our economy was better. We wish that, we pump too much money into the economy and inflation naturally occurs. At least from what I learned in economics 30 years ago, that's a natural occurrence after that happens. That all said, I'm pretty optimistic personally that I think the Fed's heading in the right direction. I wish there was a little more fiscal policy measures as well that could be applied here. As it pertains to our software category, the uncertainty, it doesn't really matter, right? If you go back every year for the last 30 years, there were always, wars that came along. Wars aren't usually pre-announced, they happen. There's supply chain disruptions. We've gone through all sorts of, that is really the reality of running a business today. The exogenous factors are so prominent and so unpredictable that you just have to navigate a business in that. That uncertainty is a general rule, regardless. I think it'll be the same in 5 years, 10 years. Maybe different factors, but they're all things you can't predict and control. So the amount of demand that we have in our space, I think, is dramatically increased. I think coming out of the pandemic, there was an amplification of the need because the frequency at which they needed to do scenario modeling and understand the what ifs and what's going to happen to our liquidity, what will happen to our supply chain if this happens, if those stores have to close, what's going to happen. That really heightened for a lot of finance teams that they didn't have resilient systems that enable that to happen. So this type of economy actually seems to be lending itself to increasing demand for us. And then the broader thing that's happening is, the office of CFO or back office technology areas are actually being modernized at a pretty dramatic pace. So a lot of companies invested in marketing and CRM, sales and solutions, moving all that stuff, modernizing in the cloud. Workforce, HR, I think with human capital management got quite a bit of that. And now I think it's moved, ERP is now significantly moving into the cloud. And in the last 7 or 8 years, I think there's been a fairly rapid maturation of an understanding that planning and reporting and being able to course correct your business with data has become almost like a must-have now. So yeah, I think we seem to be very resilient to what's happening in the economy, and I don't wish a recession on anyone, including ourselves. But if it happens, I still think that CFOs are going to understand the need for this technology.
Grant Halloran, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack.
Hi, it's Jack. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Group CFO Jonathan Blythe of Collingwood Lighting and CFO Ian Charles of Filevine. But first, this. From episode 542, this is 1 Minute with Tim Zhu, CFO of the Boston Red Sox.
I remember walking around Fenway Park and I was just studying the number of turnstiles that we had at each gate. So we had 10 turnstiles at gate A and we had 5 turnstiles at gates B, C, D, and E. And I was walking around and I saw these really long lines at gate A and there were no lines at gate B. And I asked, what I usually do is I went and asked for data. I went and asked the ticket office, can you give me the turnstile counts for the last 3 years and by gate, and then I put them all in a spreadsheet and I created these charts that suggested that more than 50% of our fans go through gate A, and it's very consistent. We should have 17 turnstiles at gate A, and we should only have 2 at gate B. And I remember people thinking, 17 turnstiles, that's crazy. And I said, trust me, you want to have the right number of turnstiles that align with the number of fans that are coming in, and that allows you to have the shortest average lines. And sure enough, I made this presentation, and I remember, convincing them to move the turnstiles. So again, going back to my very first summer, I would say my strategic moment or my aha moment was just, convincing the organization. And I don't want to take too much credit for this, but they just didn't at the time have someone in the organization at the time. They had plenty of people on the baseball side. Theo Epstein had plenty of analysts and did a great job on the baseball side. But on the business side, they didn't at the time have a lot of people that were using data to make business decisions and make businesses more efficient. And I was able to do that early on and made that part of my role throughout the last 18 years.
Hi, it's Jack Sweeney, and I'm here at Perform 23 speaking with Jonathan Blythe, Group CFO for Collingwood Lighting of Northamptonshire, England. Based there anyway, they're growing throughout Europe, apparently. Jonathan, we always like to begin by understanding what your top-of-mind priorities are as a CFO. What would you tell us?
So my priorities over the next 12 months are around making the team at Collingwood more forward-looking as a business, because we've got a lot of challenges coming our way in terms of the current economy and movements around Europe in terms of products as well, and also the local economy within the UK, because we supply into the residential home market, and as interest rates have been going up, that's started to slow down. So we've got to think of more in interesting ways to sell products to our customers that still meet their needs.
Could you tell me, what are your top of mind metrics then? What are you looking at?
So we're looking at, in the UK, for example, the number of new homes that are being built, because our products go into new homes, and how much refurbishment people are doing on their homes as well, because that's a key metric for us. If people aren't refurbishing their homes, they're not putting new lighting in their homes, and therefore our sales will be impacted by that.
Tell us something about your industry and how perhaps technology is playing a role in your latest offerings.
In terms of technology, clearly lighting is moving more and more towards the technological field in terms of smart lighting and how that can operate in people's homes. People want homes that their lights interact based on, the push of a button, depending on their mood. If they're watching a TV film, they want that to be reflective of their lighting. So we use technology along those lines. We're very into ECG, in terms of the environment, protecting the environment. So we're doing a lot now around the technology around making sure that we reuse plastics where we can. We're eliminating cardboard within our production, and just trying to make sure that we use technology as best as we can as well. So
we always like to speak to finance leaders about their lines of sight. And let me put it this way, that sort of visibility into the business. When it comes to visibility, how is Collingwood? How are you guys doing? Are you where you need to be?
So we're very early on the visibility journey in terms of, we're a relatively small business 18 months, 2 years ago, and we've grown massively through acquisitions in Italy and Belgium. What that means is we've got now 3 main trading businesses in those regions, but we don't have something at the centre and at group level that brings all that information together. So we're very early on in that process. It's been largely driven by spreadsheets historically, but we're now moving towards systems like Planful to start drawing in that data so we can start to form more holistic views about markets.
Hi, it's Jack Sweeney. We're at Perform 23 this week, and we just caught up with serial CFO Ian Charles of Filevine. And you know what? I have my AI question all ready for you. How is AI going to impact the business, Ian?
Well, Jack, that's a great question, and everyone's asking themselves that question. Specific to our market, it impacts it in a number of ways. It allows us to produce a product with extremely high gross margins. The name artificial intelligence sort of says it all right there. being able to have that intelligence within your data is certainly important. But for those companies that have it and can leverage it, they can now offer a product that is very fast and relatively inexpensive to produce. So that's the first way it's going to impact the business. So it's going to be dramatically accretive to new revenues. It leads us to number two. It's in high demand. Everybody is talking about it. Everybody wants to try and figure out how can they leverage AI for their benefit. And I don't care if you're growing oranges or you're producing software. It is a way to leverage extreme amounts of data for the benefit of the business. And if you can come up with a product that is in demand, it's going to impact your business to a great extent. It's also going to give you visibility into data that you never had before. You never asked yourself these questions, or the company never asked themselves these questions. And being able to put forth a product that illustrates, let me give you an example. We're a legal platform, much in the same way that Planful is built for the office of the CFO. We're built for the office of the general counsel, the legal team. We take you from lead intake all the way through to case and matter management into an AI product that we generate demand letters from. And those demand letters can be generated in a fraction of the time that a paralegal, at a fraction of the cost that it would cost a paralegal to produce it, and with greater accuracy in terms of the data that demand letter has. So we can give you the actual potential exposure to the case based on what we know to be true from prior cases and data. And all of that in a matter of, if it's a day, it's a long time. But if it's a manual process, we're talking weeks, and human beings need to produce it. So huge impacts.
Ian, what are we to make of this economy? When you look through your lens, what do you see?
I'm certainly worried about the economy. I'm worried because there's uncertainty. There's a lot of signals going in many different directions. So we talked a little bit earlier about AI, and that's definitely a signal, an arrow going up and to the right. It's the hot part of the market, and that's a good thing. There's also other signals. Some of the larger tech companies that are laying off a lot of workers to protect their earnings forecasts. There's uncertainty in real estate. There's uncertainty in banking. I'm particularly worried about the banking sector. I could honestly say that about half of all of our banking institutions are underwater, or they're not solvent based on their tier 1 capital coverage, based on how they're holding securities, either for sale or to maturity. And that could be a big problem. And if the banks start to go down and lending gets cut off, it's going to ripple through the economy. We already know that real estate is on its way down. Commercial mortgage-backed securities are an issue. Commercial real estate is an issue. The holders of those loans are certainly worried. So we're very connected in so many different ways that it's not going to take much to create a negative economic environment in the future. What does that mean for your business? Well, what it means for your business may be different than what it means for ours. We feel a little bit more insulated and fortunate given that we're in the legal sector. And so there's going to be a continued, if not increased, need for many services during such a downturn. But for some of your larger enterprise SaaS businesses, enterprise software, technology, manufacturing, retail, housing, I think we have a potential to enter a dark period. We're not out of this recession just yet. I don't believe we've actually officially entered it just yet, although the media thinks that we have. So I do think there's bright spots. I mentioned AI as being a bright spot. There are many segments of technology that, while they're not booming, they're certainly doing phenomenally well. The entire economy is not going into a recession, but parts of it are. So we do have some hopes for companies like ours that are in certain market segments that are growing and needed, and we'll continue to see growth. Maybe not the growth that we've seen in years past, and maybe they don't get the multiples that the investors were giving in the past, but we know of a number of deals in AI being, just to be specific, that have gone for multiples, or the investments have gone for multiples way above what we have seen in the past. So there's some bright spots there.
Ian, as always, we want to ask you to look forward the next 12 months and share with us what are your priorities then as CFO of Filevine.
Look, every company is different. Even if you're making the same product for the same market, for the same customer, every company tends to look at things a little bit differently and have different priorities. I can say I was fortunate enough to step into the role of CFO at Filevine and be dealt with a company that's growing very rapidly. But with that growth comes challenges. Is it the right kind of growth? When you're growing at that speed, you tend to sometimes deprioritize some very important issues. I can use gross margin as an example. We were growing at such a rate that we were not digesting the customers as efficiently as we should have. We were doing it internally through a services team that was doing a great job, but sort of overwhelmed with the amount of business that was coming in. And so therefore it was taking longer and costing more than it should have. So in turn, gross margin became our top priority. And we set up a partner network to allow us to implement and digest these customers. And that has led to huge margin expansion, gross margin expansion. So that was our first priority from day one. In doing so, we reduced quite a bit of burn. So we were spending a lot of money doing these implementations, creating negative gross margins. And so in lockstep, we've reduced burn. Of course, the priority these days is what about AI? What are we doing with AI? And so coming out with the right product for the market that delivers an efficient way of leveraging the data that's in our system for an AI product was a priority. And those of you that follow Filevine can see that Demands AI launch that we launched a couple of weeks ago. And then if you combine all this together, it's really about managing growth with profitability. And the pendulum has absolutely swung back. Investors are looking for that. They're looking for the rule of 40. They're not looking for 100% growth and 100% negative EBITDA. They're looking for the right balance. And that was another priority that we have successfully executed on.
Well, we'd like to thank CFO Jonathan Blythe of Collingwood Lighting of the UK and CFO Ian Charles of Filevine for allowing us to put them on the spot here at Perform 23. And please don't forget, we drop new episodes every Sunday and Wednesday of CFO Thought Leader. And permit me once more to say thank you for listening.